The instant my access card malfunctioned, I knew it was Monday morning, 8:10 a.m., and I was precisely 10 minutes behind schedule. Something unprecedented in my tenure here. The security panel flashed. Crimson, not emerald again. Crimson. I swiped it a third time before a colleague from finance walked by with a knowing glance. You might want to head directly to the main entrance, Rachel. He's waiting for you. I didn't need clarification on who he was. And at that moment, my lungs constricted. Not from anxiety, but from utter disbelief. My name is Rachel Sullivan. I'm 38 years old, raising my 7-year-old daughter Emma by myself. For the past 3 years, I've dedicated 70-hour weeks as the Senior Operations Director at Westfield Innovations. Throughout these years, I've sacrificed celebrations, medical visits, and even Emma's preschool graduation ceremony, all to hit targets, compensate for staff shortages, and honestly, prevent the company from collapsing during its aggressive expansion phase. But evidently, none of that carried any weight. Rachel. My supervisor, Nathan Blackwell, called out the moment I stepped into the reception area. His expression remained stone-cold. His voice sliced through the atmosphere like a scalpel. Several colleagues lingered nearby, hovering uncomfortably. Sensing the tension but not daring to step in. I need to speak with you immediately. I followed him through the glass entryway into the central meeting space. No, how's your morning going? Not even a glimpse of interest. Just the echo of polished loafers on marble and the heavy thump of the door ceiling behind us. He turned, posture rigid, gaze piercing. You were 10 minutes late. I know. I'm terribly sorry. Emma developed a high fever last night. I contacted the on-call doctor twice and barely slept. I arrived as quickly as possible. Nathan didn't even flinch. So that's your justification. I paused, bewildered. Justification, Nathan? I've never been tardy before. He lifted his palm to silence me as if I were an employee he barely tolerated. I don't want explanations. Your priorities are evidently elsewhere. We can't accommodate staff who believe personal matters excuse breaking protocol. I blinked in disbelief. I've worked 70-hour weeks since 2020. I haven't utilized a single sick day. I haven't even taken a complete vacation since joining. And just last month, when the Phoenix branch system failed, I remained at the office for 36 consecutive hours. And today you're late, he interrupted, his tone frigid and measured. And you're becoming emotional, which confirms exactly what I needed to know. He reached into his jacket and extracted a security override device. The deactivator. I'd witnessed it once previously. Reserved exclusively for high-level terminations with a click and a pulse of red light. He looked directly into my eyes and stated, Your access card has been disabled. Security will escort you out. The room fell silent. I didn't weep. I didn't shout. I didn't even recoil. I simply returned the gaze of the man to whom I had devoted 3 years of my existence. The man who had commended me for rescuing million-dollar contracts, the man who referenced my name in quarterly briefings as the quintessential example of dedication. I straightened my back, nodded once, and acknowledged understanding. He appeared disappointed. As if anticipating a dramatic reaction that would justify the public humiliation he had just orchestrated. Instead, I exited calmly past my colleagues, past the front desk, past the floor where I'd spent countless evenings on client calls and crisis management. I avoided eye contact with everyone, but I could sense the stillness in every space I traversed. Tense, suffocating. Filled with shock. Security escorted me to my desk as I gathered a framed photograph of Emma. 2 journals and a resilient succulent I'd managed to sustain longer than my employment at the company. Nobody spoke, but several eyes glistened. Several people recognized this wasn't merely about a delayed access scan. This was personal. Nathan had been awaiting an opportunity like this, and I'd provided it. Courtesy of an ill child and a 10-minute delay. As I left the building, the spring breeze stung my cheeks and I felt the burn of humiliation settle in. Not for being dismissed, but for how rapidly I was discarded. 3 years of dedication erased in a single morning. At home, Emma was curled under a quilt on the sofa, watching animated shows. Her cheeks were flushed, but her temperature had decreased slightly. I settled beside her, kissed her forehead, and smiled. "You're home early," she mumbled. "Yeah," I said gently. "I get to spend more time with you today." But as I sat there gazing at the photograph from my desk now on the coffee table, my phone vibrated. A message preview illuminated the screen from Marcus Reynolds, Senior Director of International Operations at Horizon Global Enterprises. Subject: Urgent. Available to talk today? I stared at the screen. Heart rate is accelerating. Nathan had no concept of what was coming. I gazed at the message from Marcus Reynolds for several extended moments. The text blurring on the display. Urgent. Available to talk today? The previous time I'd communicated with Marcus was approximately a year ago, during a collaborative logistics project between Westfield Innovations and Horizon Global Enterprises. He had been impressed by my capacity to rectify a supply chain disaster that jeopardized a $4.2 million agreement. At that time, he described me as composed during a hurricane. We'd maintained minimal contact. A LinkedIn update here, a conference acknowledgement there. Nothing intimate, nothing substantial. But now he was reaching out with urgency prominently displayed on the exact day of my termination. That couldn't be coincidental. Still dressed in my work attire, I entered the kitchen and poured a glass of water, attempting to organize my thoughts. The image of Nathan's smug expression flashed through my consciousness again. The click of that deactivator, the hush in the office as I departed. It wasn't merely termination. It was an execution. Rapid, merciless, and exceedingly public. I retrieved my phone and dialed. "Rachel," Marcus answered immediately. His tone was crisp, professional, but not harsh. "Is it convenient now?" "It is," I replied, my voice more subdued than intended. "How can I assist you?" I heard about this morning's events. Of course he had. Information always circulated quickly in this sector, especially when one of the top-performing managers in the Western region gets dismissed like a security threat. "I regret that it unfolded that way," he continued. "But I won't pretend. It expedited something we've been internally discussing at Horizon to our immediate agenda." I mentally processed this information. "We've been monitoring your accomplishments for some time, Rachel. You transformed Westfield's operations division from a makeshift spreadsheet arrangement to a fully integrated, data-driven logistics framework in under 2 years. You revitalized their East Coast division in 2021, and you're the sole reason the Phoenix recovery didn't destabilize the entire southern corridor last autumn." I swallowed hard. I'd always recognized my contributions. But hearing them enumerated like that, like evidence in court proceedings, struck something profound. "We want to discuss you joining our team," he stated plainly. "We intended to approach you later this quarter, but now that you're available, we'd like to accelerate the process." My mind raced with countless thoughts, but I maintained composure. "I genuinely appreciate that. But I'll need a day or two to process everything." "Certainly," Marcus said. "We'll arrange a call for Wednesday. Just understand this, what Nathan did wasn't merely callous. It was foolish. His loss could become our advantage. And I'm not saying this lightly. I have board approval and budget secured. This is genuine." After we disconnected, I sat silently for a moment. The water glass is still untouched before me. This transcended termination. It revealed what the dismissal had exposed. I reflected on my initial year at Westfield. I'd accepted the position 3 weeks after finalizing my divorce. Emma was only 4 then. Still waking distressed in the night. Still confused about Daddy's absence. I'd taken the role for stability. I convinced myself it was temporary. But when Nathan promoted me after just 7 months and began referring to me as his reliable troubleshooter, I committed further. I contributed more. I worked late. I agreed to everything. I remember December 2021. Emma contracted a severe respiratory infection and I worked remotely from her hospital room while she received oxygen. Nathan phoned 3 times that night, not inquiring about her condition, but requesting updates on shipping delays from our Houston distribution center. I provided the updates. I didn't resist. I believed loyalty would be reciprocated. Last year, when our department achieved its highest efficiency rating in company history, I stayed awake until midnight preparing the presentation he used to impress the board. He didn't even include my name. But I convinced myself it was inconsequential. Eventually it'll matter, I kept repeating, until it didn't. Until 10 minutes of being human, of being a mother, negated 3 years of being a machine. That evening, as Emma slumbered peacefully in her bedroom, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. I didn't visit job boards. I didn't update my resume. Instead, I composed a list. Everything I had accomplished in the past 3 years that exceeded expectations: 16 overnight shifts, 3 major project salvages, $11.7 million in retained accounts, 0 sick leave taken. 1 child was raised independently. As I examined that list, the anger I hadn't permitted myself to feel began to surface. Nathan had portrayed me as disloyal, but I had been loyal to a fault, and he had underestimated something far more dangerous than vengeance: a woman with nothing to lose and the documentation to prove it. My phone vibrated again. A message from Daniel, our senior data analyst. He's acting like you were some disposable intern. People are furious. Something indicates this isn't concluded. He was correct. It wasn't. And 1 week later, Nathan Blackwell would find himself receiving a phone call that would unravel everything. By Tuesday, the repercussions had begun. Initially whispers, then text messages, then calls arriving in rapid succession from former colleagues. I wasn't responding to most, not from indifference, but because I wasn't prepared to discuss it. Not yet. I needed space, not to mourn the job loss. I wasn't mourning Nathan's validation or the excessive hours or the hollow praise. I was mourning my own silence. The occasions I should have spoken up but remained quiet. The instances I allowed his tough management style to pass unchallenged. The times I mistook being needed for being valued. But those I had worked alongside, who had witnessed me sustain that department week after week, they weren't remaining silent. Daniel was the first to call again. I answered this time. "Hey," I said, settling onto my living room couch. Emma was napping, finally fever-free. The house was tranquil for the first time in days. "You should be aware of current developments," he said immediately. "There was a meeting this morning. Nathan attributed your dismissal to, get this, habitual tardiness and insubordination. He claimed you'd received multiple warnings." I sat upright. "That's completely false." "I know. Everyone present knew. You've never even arrived late before." HR appeared stunned. "Someone requested documentation, and Nathan stated it was confidential." The atmosphere was strange. Several of us exchanged glances. Are we genuinely allowing this? Are people accepting it? He exhaled heavily. "Some are, but not those who worked directly with you." Olivia looked prepared to throw something, and the junior staff appeared frightened. "If they can terminate you like that, what implications does that have for the rest of us?" That was the crux of it. My dismissal wasn't merely unjust. It was a cautionary demonstration. I thanked Daniel and disconnected, my thoughts racing. Nathan wasn't just attempting to erase me. He was reconstructing the narrative. Controlling the account before someone else could, before I could. But what he didn't realize was that I wasn't interested in a public confrontation. Not yet. Because the most effective justice isn't vociferous. It's observing everything they constructed crumble without ever raising your voice. By Wednesday morning, my phone vibrated again, this time with a calendar invitation from Marcus Reynolds' assistant. Video conference, 11 a.m. I logged in 10 minutes early. My hair freshly styled, a pristine navy blouse donned, coffee in hand. Professional, composed, and focused. At precisely 11 o'clock, Marcus appeared on screen with two colleagues, Sophia Martinez, Horizon's Chief Personnel Officer, and Julian Kim, Director of Strategic Operations. All names I recognized. All decision makers. Rachel, Sophia said warmly. Thank you for your time. I'm grateful for the opportunity. Marcus proceeded directly to the matter. We'd like to extend a formal offer. Director of Strategic Logistics. You'd lead cross-functional teams and spearhead our national optimization implementation commencing next quarter. I blinked, processing the information faster than I could absorb it. The compensation package is competitive, Sophia continued, but more significantly, we're devoted to work-life integration. Your schedule would be adaptable, remote when necessary. We understand your parental responsibilities are integral to your identity, not an impediment. That was when it happened. Tears welled unexpectedly and uncontrollably. I averted my gaze from the camera momentarily, embarrassed. I apologize, I whispered, dabbing quickly with a tissue. It's just, that's the first time anyone acknowledged that motherhood wasn't problematic. Sophia's expression softened. It isn't. It never should have been. I accepted the position immediately. Not from vindictiveness. Not to prove anything, but because for the first time in years, I felt acknowledged as a person. Not just a productive asset with a title. That afternoon, the Westfield rumors intensified. A message from Olivia appeared, just discovered Nathan is attempting to block reference inquiries about you. HR is displeased. Another from an intern I had mentored, your workspace remains vacant. As if they're uncertain how to function without you. And then this from Daniel, Marcus Reynolds contacted the office today. Asked for Nathan. Apparently it was urgent. That message resonated like thunder. Nathan's perfect public relations facade. His fabricated account of my insubordination confronted something more formidable than denial, a client with influence. A company with leverage. A reputation he couldn't silence. He believed he could eradicate me before the entire office and depart untouched. But what he failed to realize was that I had left behind more than just a succulent and a framed photograph at my desk. I had left behind a legacy, an impact, and now the tide was reversing. By Thursday morning, Nathan's carefully constructed image was deteriorating. And this time, it wasn't behind closed doors. Olivia contacted me, her voice hushed but rapid, as if she were stepping outside specifically to speak. You won't believe current developments here. I leaned against my kitchen counter, phone pressed to my ear. Nathan conducted an emergency session with the executive team early this morning. Something containing misinformation, though nobody comprehends what that signifies. Then we received a company-wide email instructing employees not to comment on personnel matters. It was peculiar. I envisioned it, the frantic scrambling, the ambiguous threats disguised as policy reminders, the indications of someone losing control while desperately attempting to maintain appearances. Olivia continued, rumor suggests Horizon contacted again, not just Marcus. Their legal department. Apparently, Nathan is attempting to classify your termination under security concerns, to avoid explaining why their preferred operations contact suddenly vanished. I remained silent initially, letting the pause communicate for itself. Yes, she added. People are apprehensive, but they're no longer accepting the narrative. They're recalling who actually sustained operations here. It wasn't him. That marked the first instance I permitted myself to experience the slightest satisfaction. Not gloating. Not retribution. Recognition. Later that afternoon, I received correspondence from HR, not Westfield's, but from Horizon's HR team confirming my new employee documentation and orientation schedule. There it was, the official commencement of my next chapter. No retrospection, but Nathan was very much still looking backward. Still attempting to remedy a situation he didn't realize had expanded beyond his executive suite. Daniel messaged again. Nathan attempted to schedule communication with Marcus to address the situation. Marcus declined, stating he's escalating it to the board. That was the moment I recognized this transcended personal victory. It represented a shift. One individual's arrogance was jeopardizing millions in partnerships. You don't publicly humiliate your highest-performing employee and expect to escape unscathed. Not when that employee cultivated the relationships you depended upon. Friday arrived, the day Nathan received the call. I didn't witness it, but I didn't need to. The aftermath communicated sufficiently. Daniel's message arrived first. Nathan stormed out following a 40-minute call, slammed his door so forcefully the lights flickered. No one's seen him since. Minutes later, Olivia confirmed, Horizon is withdrawing. They indicated they're reassessing external vendor relationships, essentially signaling termination. And just like that, the figures Nathan had boasted about at every board meeting, the Westfield Horizon account, was slipping through his grasp. I wondered if he reflected on the moment he labeled me disloyal. If he replayed it mentally, how he deactivated my access card before my colleagues, how he anticipated my breakdown. Instead, I exited with dignity, with my reputation intact. And now, a week later, the silence I left behind had transformed into an echo so resonant even the board couldn't disregard it. That evening, after Emma had retired, I sat on the balcony with herbal tea. Watching the city illuminate in the twilight, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I allowed it to ring, directed to voicemail. A minute later, the transcript appeared. Rachel, this is Victoria Reynolds, chairperson of the board at Westfield. I'd like to discuss recent developments with you. If you're willing, please return my call at your convenience. I smiled faintly, placing the phone face down. They were beginning to comprehend the truth, that leadership isn't demonstrated through titles or corner offices. It's proven during crises and who maintains stability. Nathan hadn't led. He'd controlled. He'd dominated, micromanaged, and weaponized procedures. But under pressure, he had no foundation. No trust, no team. He had confused intimidation with respect. And now, without me shouldering the burden, everything was disintegrating. Monday would mark my debut at Horizon, an organization that valued more than mere availability. A company that perceived motherhood as an asset, not a liability. A company that recognized my contributions before I'd even arrived. But beforehand, I had one additional decision, to accept that call from the board chairperson, or allow Nathan to finally confront consequences of his own making. I remained undecided, but I understood this much: what he inflicted upon me wouldn't be forgotten, because sometimes the most potent revenge isn't clamorous. It's watching everything they constructed crumble without ever needing to raise your voice. Monday arrived with a chill, but within me it felt like renewal. I zipped my finest blazer, the one previously reserved for quarterly evaluations that led nowhere, and secured my hair. Glancing in the mirror, I noticed something unusual. I wasn't anxious. Not remotely. For the first time in years, I wasn't entering a building where I needed to justify my presence. This time, I'd been recruited for my accomplishments and identity. Emma stood in the hallway, clutching her backpack. Are you going to work today, Mom? I am, I smiled. To a completely new position. She tilted her head curiously. Do they know you're my mom? I knelt and gazed into her eyes. Yes. And they consider that one of my greatest attributes. She beamed. That sufficed. Horizon's offices contrasted sharply with Westfield's gray cubicles and dim lighting. Here, glass walls admitted abundant sunlight. The energy was vibrant but cooperative. People moved purposefully, but without frantic urgency. At reception, I received a welcome badge already prepared, a branded notebook, and a handwritten note from Marcus. Rachel, we're delighted to welcome you. Your reputation precedes you. Let's create something extraordinary. I hadn't even reached my workspace before two team leaders introduced themselves and offered to guide me through their ongoing projects. No defensiveness, no ego. Just professionals eager to collaborate. At 10 a.m., I attended my first executive strategy meeting. I wasn't sitting silently in the back row anymore. I was at the table. Sophia, the chief personnel officer, acknowledged me before I spoke. Rachel, I'd appreciate hearing your perspective. I opened my notes calmly. Years of preparation are now flowing naturally. I presented a risk assessment framework I developed over the weekend to help Horizon streamline vendor evaluations, something that had taken Westfield months to even begin addressing. Upon finishing, the room remained quiet momentarily. Then came nods, then inquiries. Genuine ones. Thoughtful ones. And then Marcus leaned back and smiled. Precisely why we recruited you. I wasn't holding my breath anymore. Meanwhile, at Westfield, the silence I had left behind had transformed to commotion. Olivia messaged during lunch, 3 resignations this morning. One from procurement, one from logistics, one from IT. All cited identical reasons in their exit interviews. Rachel was the reason I remained this long. And Nathan's office remains closed. No one's seen him since Friday afternoon. Rumor suggests the board is reviewing certain decisions, whatever that entails. I didn't respond. Nothing required saying. The avalanche had already commenced. That evening, Emma and I sat at the kitchen table enjoying pasta. A peaceful, simple dinner. She described a book she was reading in class. I told her about a large table in a spacious room where everyone listened when I spoke. She chewed her pasta, then asked, "Are you the boss now?" I laughed softly. Something like that. But you're still my mom, right? I leaned across the table and kissed her forehead. Always. And in that moment, I realized something profound. All those years spent trying to prove I could be an exemplary employee despite being a mother, I had missed the essential point. My strength wasn't in multitasking. It was in knowing which responsibilities mattered most. Later that night, I sat on the couch with my laptop, reviewing orientation materials for my new team. I had just closed my screen when my phone vibrated again. A voicemail transcript appeared. "Rachel, this is Victoria Reynolds. I understand you've joined Horizon. I respect your decision, but I'd still value 10 minutes of your time. There are ongoing concerns at Westfield that I believe warrant your awareness." I reread it twice. So they knew, and they were beginning to confront it. Nathan hadn't merely made a poor decision. He'd exposed the underlying dysfunction. The fractures in their culture, the myth of loyalty that flows unidirectionally. Now they sought insight, perhaps even absolution. But truthfully, I had already progressed. I wasn't seeking apologies. Because you don't ascend by clinging to those who diminished you. You ascend by entering environments where you needn't apologize for your existence. It was Wednesday afternoon when the final element aligned. Horizon's quarterly operations review was proceeding. I had just presented a strategic realignment that would reduce third-party vendor expenses by 17%, and the executive team was already discussing implementation scaling. It represented the kind of meeting where ideas flowed freely, where no one concerned themselves with who spoke first, only with what was contributed. Afterward, Marcus approached me privately. "Just wanted to inform you," he said casually. "We've officially terminated the vendor agreement with Westfield. Legal dispatch notification this morning." I experienced mild surprise. Not because it occurred, but because it transpired so quietly. No dramatic conclusion, no public declaration. Just a signature, a timestamp, and a business realignment. "They're finished?" I inquired. He nodded. "We're transitioning everything internally or to smaller firms. We'll need a transition coordinator to manage the separation. We'd prefer that to be you." It was a moment rich with symmetry. 1 week prior, Nathan had terminated me before my peers. Access revoked, dignity stripped. And now I was overseeing the divestment of the same account he believed I had no claim to. Poetic justice, perhaps. But I didn't gloat. I didn't even smile. I simply nodded, calm and resolute. "Certainly I'll manage it." Because I wasn't here to settle scores. I was here to lead. That night, I finally returned Victoria Reynolds' call. She answered promptly, voice clipped but composed. "Rachel, thank you for responding to my message." "Of course. I'll be direct," she said. "We've been examining the circumstances surrounding your termination. It's become evident that there were serious procedural violations and personal biases involved. I remained silent, allowing her to continue. We were unaware of the extent of your contributions until we began auditing the accounts you managed. It appears your departure has significantly destabilized both client confidence and internal morale. There it was. The acknowledgement. Not quite an apology, but approaching one. She cleared her throat. Nathan Blackwell has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Another pause. We'd like to formally offer you reinstatement at Westfield at an executive level. Complete autonomy, substantially revised compensation, and public recognition of your achievements. My fingers tightened slightly around the phone. It would have been easy to envision this moment a week earlier. Craving it. Anticipating it. Wanting them to finally acknowledge me. Truly recognize me. After all those years. But something within me had transformed. I didn't desire a position born from damage control. I didn't want their validation now that it cost them something. I appreciate the offer, I said calmly, but I've already accepted a position elsewhere. Victoria didn't press. May I ask where? I believe you already know. Another pause. This one extended. Then, I do. There was no bitterness in her tone, only quiet comprehension. I wish you success, Rachel, she said. Thank you. I hope Westfield learns from this. I believe we will. We concluded the call on courteous, professional terms. No sharp edges, no lingering resentment, just closure. The following morning, I stood before my team at Horizon conducting a workshop on account transition management. One of the younger analysts, Zoe, remained afterward. I just wanted to express gratitude, she said. It's uncommon to encounter someone like you, someone exceptional at their profession who creates space for others. I smiled. You needn't choose between being competent and being compassionate. That's something I learned through difficulty. She nodded thoughtfully before exiting. As I gathered my materials, I gazed at the expansive windows framing the skyline. For the first time in years, I wasn't looking outward, wondering if I belonged elsewhere. I was already there. Later that week, I received a package. No sender identified. Inside was a small square box. Opening it revealed my old desk photograph. The one of Emma and me, perfectly preserved. Affixed to the reverse was a handwritten note on company stationery. For whatever it's worth, you were never invisible. We simply lacked your courage. Thank you for demonstrating how to depart with dignity and tact. I didn't need to speculate about the sender. I positioned the photograph on my new desk at Horizon. Not as a reminder of my past, but of what I had overcome. They say revenge is best served cold. But I no longer subscribe to that belief. Because the ultimate revenge isn't silence. It isn't a success. It isn't even justice. It's becoming the version of yourself you were never permitted to be. And never looking backward.